guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Ellie from ELSA'S Wholesome Life, and today's video I wanted to make for you guys a bit of a postpartum update. I'm currently 11 months postpartum, and I just wanted to kind of, I guess, give you guys a bit of a sit down chit chat video where I can go over I guess how the last 11 months have been. I've also never really shared with you guys my official birth story, so I thought I could briefly go over the birth story before I go into the postpartum update. If you guys have any questions that I don't answer in today's video, ask them down below and I'll get back to you. Also, after this sit down chit chat, I'm going to film for you guys a week of what my, I guess, regular workout routine looks like. So you'll get a bit of an idea of what that looks like 11 months postpartum. It's nothing crazy, so don't think that you're going to be like, whoa, shocked. My workout routine is very basic and almost non-existent at the moment, but I just want to keep it super real with you guys as a new mum. Don't want anyone feeling like pressured or guilty about where they are with their postpartum journey. So I wanted to share a real and genuine update, and hopefully this can make some of you other women, I guess, relate to where I'm at or relate to some of the things I've experienced. And yeah, just kind of sit down and chat over the things, all things new motherhood. So first, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a birth story, just so you know where I started my postpartum journey. So it's been 11 months now, and my birth didn't go exactly to plan. I didn't have a structured plan, but it definitely didn't go as quickly and easily as I thought it would. First time mum, so first births usually can be quite difficult and long, which is what my obstetrician said to me throughout my whole pregnancy. So I didn't have huge expectations to be like this mum that just meditates through her birth and has a completely unmedicated natural birth. So basically, my labor went on for about 24 hours. Probably active labor less than that though. Active labor maybe, I'm gonna say 14 to 16 hours. Basically, I went into hospital at midnight. So if you've watched my birth vlog, which I will link here, if you've watched that vlog, you would have seen that I was laboring at home and we had the bath going, and it got to about midnight, and I think I just knew mentally that I needed to get to the hospital and set myself up because I couldn't get comfortable at home knowing that I had to go somewhere shortly. Also, it being the first birth, I didn't know how quickly things were going to progress, so I just had this sort of worry in my mind that I didn't want to stay at home too long and then, you know, have my first baby at home. So around midnight we headed to the hospital, and by then things were getting pretty intense. I was out of breath and couldn't speak or verbalize through the contractions. And when we got into hospital, the midwife was so lovely, and she did a check, and we sort of explained that we were doing hypnobirthing and that we wanted things to be very quiet and dark and in our space. So we had the bath going when we got there, which was really beautiful, and it was all dark. There was a salt lamp. We put our music on, had the oil diffusing in the corner, and yeah, it was just a really nice space. I spent a lot of time in the shower and then went to the bath. I think the shower was actually my favorite place to labor because Alex could put the really hot shower head onto my back and tummy, and it just was a really nice form of pain relief. And the midwife was so great. She came and checked. I think at that stage I was 4.5 centimeters. So I was feeling really, really positive, and we sort of said to her that, well, I think Alex told her not to tell me if things weren't progressing or if it was going slow, not to tell me. So anyway, it was around 2 a.m. or something, or heading towards the early hours of the morning, and it was getting really, really intense. I was in so much pain and very, very tense. And by this stage, I'd done the shower to the bath, back to the shower, and then I think I was on the bed and I was leaning over it, and I just couldn't really get comfortable. And anyway, by this point, I felt like it must be almost time. So I think we were taking bets on when our baby would be born between my sister, Alex, and I. And I was like, 5 a.m., I'm almost there. It's definitely going to be like a 5 a.m. baby. Alex was like, oh, maybe 7 a.m. And I think Lauren guessed 6 a.m. So this was probably the early hours, maybe 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. And things, I think the midwife before her shift change, she came and did one last check and she didn't say anything. And in my mind, I kept thinking, why didn't she say how dilated I was? And this kind of like played with my mind a bit. And I think for like the next like 2 hours in my mind, I was like trying to verbalize to ask Alex, what's going on? Am I not dilating? Like, why didn't she say? And it took me like a few hours for me to finally ask. And yeah, finally I made her come back and tell me. And this was about 6 a.m. by this point. And she said, you've maybe progressed a centimeter. So that had been like 6 hours of intense active labor. And then the shift changes, new midwife came on, and yeah, I guess she maybe wasn't as in line with what our birth plan was. So she started offering, you know, would you like some morphine? Would you like some gas? Would you like the epidural? Which is fine. I'm all for all of that. That is so fine. But I think in my mental place where I was at, as soon as it was offered to me, I was like, okay, I think I need it. But I think I'd also felt a little bit like I'd failed by like asking for it, and I felt like I was failing Alex a bit because he knew that I was like, I want to do this without medication, like I want to, you know, be able to feel all of the feels of labor and birth, like that's really what I want. But after, I think it was about 9 a.m. by this point, and the obstetrician came back to check me, or that was actually the first time he'd been in, so he came and checked me for the first time, and again, I hadn't dilated at all. So by this point I was like 5 to 5.5 centimeters. So it had been like 9 hours and nothing had happened, maybe 1 centimeter in 9 hours. And she had told me that it's usually, if it goes by textbook, it's 1 centimeter every hour and a half, roughly. So that's when I decided to try the gas and morphine because they suggested that it would probably help me relax a bit. Tried that, and the gas definitely helped. I probably wish I did that a little bit sooner actually, because it did definitely sort of give me something to concentrate and just take the edge of those contractions off a bit. By about midday, I was basically like in my head trying for hours to say to Alex, give me the epidural, because I felt like I was going to die. So it took me hours to actually verbalize it. Every contraction I kept like thinking it and having these thoughts of speaking, but I wasn't actually speaking. And people have told me about how that happens in labor, how you can't actually verbalize and you're just having these conversations in your head and it takes hours to actually get something out. And it really did happen. And by about the midday time frame, I was basically like, I need it. And Alex was being that strong, supportive birth partner. Like, you're fine, you've got this, you'll be fine, Elle. No, it's not what you want. But yeah, I think after a few times of me like pleading, and then the midwives were like, agreed, like, yeah, she probably does need to have it to speed things up. So fast forward, got the epidural, and literally they checked me maybe half an hour after I'd had it. As soon as I had it, all the pain and tension went away and I could relax. I was so exhausted because it'd been overnight, and by this time it was into the midday of the new day. So they were like, this is a good time for you to have a little rest. Your birth partners can go into the next room and they can have a sleep too. And then in a couple of hours, we should be ready to have this baby. And then they checked me, and I'd gone from 5.5, 6 through till 9, and they could see that like his head was right there ready to go. So there was no time for a nap. It was straight into pushing. And he was born at 1:42 that day. So I think I had the epidural at like 12:30. I think within an hour or just over an hour, he was born. I was so exhausted. And by the time he was put onto my chest, I just remember it was such a strange thing because I felt so much emotion inside of me, but my body wasn't releasing those emotions. I couldn't cry. And I was just so like overwhelmed, so exhausted and so hungry and just absolutely nothing left in me. And so emotional, and I just couldn't release those emotions. It was the strangest thing. And they announced that he was a boy. I totally wasn't shocked. I seen all the hair on his head. I wasn't shocked by that because of all of the heartburn I got during pregnancy. And for some reason, I just felt like I knew I was having a boy by the end, so I wasn't shocked. But yeah, it was when we're back in the room a few hours later that all of a sudden it's like everything hit me and my body finally let those emotions out, and I couldn't stop crying. I was just bawling my eyes out. while he was sleeping in the little bassinet next to us, and it was just like the craziest cocktail of hormones and emotions. And it was just like we were on this huge high. Like, it's just, yeah, birth is insane and incredible. And literally, like, it felt like the hardest thing I've ever done. It probably was the hardest thing I've ever done, but within like an hour I was like, oh my God, I'd so do that again. Like, that was amazing. Like, it's just such an incredible experience. Oh, I totally forgot. I got caught up in all the emotions there. I didn't even get to let you know about the details of the birth. By the pushing stage, I'd had the epidural. I was able to move my legs, but I couldn't feel anything. So that was pretty good that I had that movement, but I really couldn't feel myself pushing. So that does make it harder to push because you really don't know what you're pushing and you're just trying to imagine you're pushing, but you don't know what you're doing. So anyway, I ended up having an episiotomy right before his birth because his head was too big, and the obstetrician was like, you're just gonna need to have this. I think I asked him when he was stitching me up after, I think I asked how many stitches, and he said honestly too many to count. There was internal stitches as well as the episiotomy. So yeah, pretty glad that I did have that epidural, and now that I had that, I'm so glad because it really helps my body to relax and speed things up. So maybe if I had it 4 hours earlier, you know, I would have had 4 hours less of labor, but I mean, you don't know these things, and I don't regret any of the decisions we made. And then in terms of the recovery, because I did have the episiotomy, it meant that it was so painful. So going to that first initial couple of weeks of recovery post-birth, there was obviously a lot of pain and swelling from having that cut and those stitches. So I was often sitting in frozen nappies to numb it. And yeah, I remember the next day when they came around with the medicine and just gave me like Panadol and Nurofen, like, here you go, this is your pain relief. I remember being like, are you serious? But you can do it, you get through it. Even just like sitting to breastfeed was so painful. So yeah, those first 10 days were quite uncomfortable, and I couldn't really do much activity at all. I know we went to coffee a few times and we'd just drive and slowly walk. I did feel like pretty fragile in those initial days, and basically from around the 1 week mark, I think things started to feel a lot better, and by 2 weeks I was pretty good again. For me, the hardest thing was just having to constantly sit up, feed Bowie every 2 hours, and be basically putting so much pressure on that area. So that was probably the hardest thing about the initial postpartum recovery. I also experienced postpartum night sweats, which is caused by a sudden drop of estrogen post-birth or post-pregnancy. And that hormone change causes you to have night sweats in the night. So many times I'd wake up just like covered in water, and I'd always think it was like my boobs leaking, but it was just like I was so hot and cold. So that was a bit of a strange one. I don't think everyone gets that, but that went on for about 2 weeks. In regards to post-birth pains, so after birth, your uterus has to shrink back up to its original size. And by doing that, it contracts to shrink. And it usually actually happens while you're breastfeeding. So in those first few weeks, I think it was about the first like 4 weeks, probably most intense in the first 2 weeks, you'd get sort of like those crampy period pains when you'd start breastfeeding, and that was just the uterus shrinking back up. I didn't find it too painful. I believe it gets worse with second and third babies, so I guess I'll see next time. What else? My gosh, it's been only 11 months, but I feel like I already forget so much that happened. My breastfeeding journey, I was very lucky. It's been so easy and so smooth. I've only had one small hiccup with a blocked duct, which was quite painful. But otherwise, other than that, I haven't had any issues with cracked or bleeding nipples. Straight away, I went on to this cream called Foodie Balm by B&Co. So we stock these in the Wholesome Store. And I was recommended it by other mums that I know. They said it's amazing and it's all natural. So I straight away started using that post-birth. I don't know if that helped, but that's just something I did, and I have had a really smooth run. Fingers crossed. We're still breastfeeding regularly, and yeah, it's all gone really well. So I have no issues with that, which I'm so thankful for, because I think when I was pregnant, that was one of my biggest worries or concerns. I think it's like that stigma of having a smaller bust size. You think when you become a mum that you're maybe not going to have a good milk supply, or you're going to struggle with it. But yeah, I've had a really smooth and great journey. I think the biggest help for that as well was that we stayed in the hospital for 2 extra nights after, and had all the midwives coming in and checking the latch, giving me tips. And really, I think that set me up for a really smooth and good breastfeeding journey, just having so much advice. So even if you're not in the hospital and you're at home and you have your mum or your mother-in-law, your sisters, your friends, get their advice, get their tips, get them to check if the latch is okay, book in with a lactation consultant, because all those things could save you so much pain and discomfort and hardness with your breastfeeding journey. I guess in terms of changes postpartum with my body, I'm now 11 months, so in terms of weight, I didn't gain too much weight during pregnancy. I think I gained overall 12 kilos, and that falls in the healthy weight gain range for my weight pre-pregnancy. Right now, I'm back to my pre-pregnancy weight, and I really think maybe breastfeeding has helped that, but I'm not really sure. I haven't deprived myself, or I haven't tried to diet and lose weight. That is just so not something that I would ever do anymore, or something that I've even thought about, because I just don't think that's a healthy way to think postpartum. It takes 9 months or 10 months to grow a baby. So, for 9 or 10 months for your body to recover, even more so than that, I think, because I'm 11 months and I feel like I'm still recovering. So yeah, I kind of just kept eating my normal diet before, just went back to eating all nutritious whole food plant diet, but I don't count calories. I don't plan out my meals. I don't restrict myself from eating anything. Especially in those first few months, I was just eating so much. I was so hungry and so thirsty breastfeeding. And I think a big part of having a healthy, good milk supply is having enough nutritious food and hydration. So yeah, really don't put pressure on yourselves to lose that weight and get back to your pre-pregnancy body, because literally once you become a mum, your body is never going to be the same as your pre-pregnancy body, because you're now a mum, you've carried a baby. Things are just different. Building on that, in the last few weeks of pregnancy, I actually got stretch marks all over my belly. I remember getting to about 36 weeks and thinking oh my God, yes, I haven't got any stretch marks. I don't think I'm going to get any. My mom didn't get any, and she carried me and my sister as twins. So genetically, I think I'm just going to be fine. But I do have stretch marks from puberty when I was a teenager here. So I guess genetically I am prone to getting stretch marks. And in those last few weeks, firstly I started getting these ones here, which you can see, these lines above my belly button. They were the first ones to sort of show. I think 2 lines popped up and I was like, hang on, what's that? And they were a shiny white line. And I sort of watched them as they spread. It kind of looks like a sun, they're little rays. And thought, maybe that's all I'll get. And then I remember, I think I was 38 weeks. And I remember sitting in front of the mirror because I couldn't see the underside of my belly. And I was sitting there, and the way I was sitting with the light hitting, I seen all these shiny white, actually I think they were pink at the time. Yeah, they started off pinky purplish, more of a reddy pink, but they were a shiny, different sort of skin. And I remember sitting there in the light and tilting my belly, and I was like, oh, I think that's stretch marks. And then I got up close and had a good look and was like, okay, yeah, I've got stretch marks. And then in the last week, I actually got what's called pups rash. And that's a condition where in those last weeks, and they say it usually correlates with having a boy. So that was another reason I thought I was having a boy. But you basically get this really fierce, itchy belly, and it's covered in a rash. That's right, I had this rash covering my belly. It stung, it was so itchy, and I couldn't stop scratching it. And I remember thinking it's gonna make those stretch marks worse. So I was trying not to scratch it. I was putting sting cream on it that numbs the skin, and just constantly trying to get Alex to tickle it just to stop me from scratching it, because it was oh my God, I really hope I don't get that next time, because it was so excruciating. So anyway, post-birth, I think the stretch marks actually looked more obvious when there was no baby in there, and I had just sort of that postpartum belly where it kind of sits out like a cone. It's really squidgy, and I feel like the stretch marks, because the skin came back in, they looked a little bit more obvious. They were quite red and they looked quite dark, and I was pretty worried, but a lot of people reassured me that over time they will fade, they'll turn to white, and then eventually as the years go on they'll just get less and less noticeable. So now 11 months, I will show you guys. I wouldn't say I'm super confident about them, but I'll show you anyway, just because whatever, we're being super real here. So if you can see the lines here, they're all here, and there's, yeah. But because I'm in my pale winter skin, it's probably not super obvious. But yeah, I guess at first I was pretty like, oh, how do I feel about having stretch marks? Like that was probably the biggest thing. And I remember my sister being like, in a non-offensive way, it's not like you're a bikini model, like you're not in a bikini for your job. It's not, you know, it's not what makes up who you are. Like, and if low-rise jeans become the next fashion, damn, that sucks. But at first I definitely did mind, but I don't know. You just get to a point where you're like, whatever. It's like the ones on my hip, you know. As a teenager when they were first there, I really was like so self-conscious about it. Now I'm like, whatever. It's part of who you are. It's part of your story. It's something to remind you of, you know, what you've been through. Like that, those ones there remind me of my teenage years. And then this one here reminds me of Bowie. So it's like, you know, I think as the time goes on, you'll get more and more confident and comfortable with it as well. So at the end of the day, I think when you become a mum, I guess the biggest change is that your priorities change and your purpose, or I don't know, I guess like how you look doesn't matter so much, because you have this new view on life and this new human being that is so much more important. So having some stretch marks that may make you not feel comfortable or confident, or might not look so pretty in a bikini, really doesn't matter that much. So the last thing that I want to cover, which will lead into the last part of this video, is my return to exercise and exercise routine postpartum. So I waited until 6 weeks before I did any exercise. I went and seen a pelvic health physio. Definitely recommend doing that. I feel like that isn't spoken enough or recommended enough. I went for my 6 weeks with my OB, which was great. He said everything's healing up, all the stitches and everything, and the internal. And then I went to the physio, and they also do an internal examination, actually like so much more thorough. And it was probably the best thing I've done in my postpartum recovery. And seriously, I recommend it to all my friends who have babies. Like, go see a physio. Even if you had like a really easy birth, it's still good just to go see them. They can give you tips for how to get back into exercise, how to re-strengthen up the pelvic floor and all that. And they'll do a thorough internal examination. So I did that, and then I also went and did Pilates there as well. I'll put the name. It was called the Wellness Boutique, and they're on the Gold Coast. And I went and seen the physio, Danny. I did a couple of private classes with her, and then I joined in the mums and bubs classes of the Reformer Pilates, and that really was like so good for getting that core strength back and just being really slow and so much focus on the pelvic floor. Whereas I feel like a lot of Pilates, there isn't a huge focus on what you should be doing correctly with all your muscles and pelvic floor. So I did the mums and bubs Pilates for about, can't remember exactly, maybe 3 or 4 months. And it's great because you can bring your baby. I often just left Bowie at the warehouse with Alex and went so I could fully concentrate for that hour at Pilates. And then on the side of that, I just did lots of walking. I think I started trying to run at about 10 to 12 weeks postpartum. And I just followed the physio's guidance of starting with short little runs. So we'd go for a walk, and while Alex is walking the pram, I'd just go run for like 2 minutes, and then I'd come back and walk. And then over the weeks, I'd just slowly increase that, and just feeling how my pelvic floor felt as I went. And then now, you'll see in the video, I'm only up to a point where I'm max running 5Ks at a time. But in that gap, I then went to running like 1 kilometer, and then I'd go for like a 3 kilometer run and stop 3 times. And then I'd go for like 3 kilometers non-stop, and I've just slowly built up. To give you a bit of context though, previously, like pre-pregnancy, I used to run like 3 to 4 times a week, and on a Sunday I'd go for like a 12K run, and that was sort of my normal baseline running level. So for me, getting back into running was what was most important, and I have been really slow with it. If you had asked me when I was pregnant when I'd be back running and exercising, I think I remember Googling it and being like, oh my God, you can't go back to the gym or you can't start working out for 6 weeks. And I was like, whoa, that's so long. Like, what am I going to do for those 6 weeks? Like, it's going to really affect my mental health because I love to get up and exercise, and I feel like it just like sets me up with lots of motivation and a positive mind for the day. So I thought, oh my God, I'm going to really struggle with that side of postpartum recovery. But literally those first 6 weeks, like, I did not think about exercise at all. I remember my sister was here at the time and she was going off doing exercise classes and was like, oh, I wish you could come. And I was like, I do not wish I could come. Like, I am not ready for that. Back to the physio. This is also what she gave me and recommended. It's called a Aquaflex. And I remember I showed this on my story and people were like, what? Blown away. But this is why I recommend seeing a pelvic health physio. So I had 6 centimeters of rectus diastasis, I think they call it, the ab separation, which has basically come back together. Like, maybe it's not 100%, but it's not really a concern. But I also had a pretty weak pelvic floor. I didn't have prolapse or any of those like stage issues, like more advanced, but I did have a pretty weak pelvic floor, which is probably due to the episiotomy and sort of a hard birth and a bigger baby. So Bowie was born 3.7 kilos. I also forgot to say we did also have to use the forceps to help get him out as well, which the physio said usually when there's forceps or some kind of intervention involved, it can cause your pelvic floor to be a little bit more weakened or a little bit more damaged. So she recommended I get one of these early stages of postpartum, and it's basically a tool to strengthen your pelvic floor. So you start with the bigger size one. It looks like a tampon that you add weights to. So it's kind of like weight training for your pelvic floor is how she described it. But basically you build up and use the different weights. It has all the instructions with it. And it basically strengthens the internal muscles of your pelvic floor. Why that's important is that if you want to get back into doing things like running and high intensity exercise, you'll need to have a strong pelvic floor to not get something called prolapse, or not to, I guess, feel like you're going to wet your pants or actually wet your pants when you exercise. So the other day I went for a run and it was only a 3K run and I needed to go to the toilet when I left home, but I thought, no, it's just 3Ks, you'll be fine. Silly me, because after the 2.5K mark, I think on that last like 500 meters, I was like, okay, I'm gonna run really fast, get to a toilet, and then I'm done. And I peed my pants. And I shared that on my story because I had to literally sat on the path, called Alex, and was like, can you please pick me up? I'm wearing grey tights, peed my pants. I'm way too embarrassed to walk home. I'm like 1 kilometer from home still. Can you please come get me? And I shared that on my story, and it was so funny because so many women messaged me saying like, oh my God, like this is my life. This is me post babies. I'm so glad you shared this. It makes me not feel alone. So that's why I'm telling you guys my embarrassing story. But that's why something like this is probably important. Firstly, I should have gone to the toilet before I run. Secondly, I should probably get back to using this a bit more to strengthen up that pelvic floor, because 11 months and I'm still not all there. Anyway, that was a bit of a sidetrack. There is one more thing I want to mention in my, I guess, rehab before exercise that I wanted to mention. I use these tights called SRC tights, and they are basically like compression tights that really compress around this area, that helps with your uterus shrinking, it helps with your posture, and helps with just like keeping everything nice and secure. If you haven't had a baby, I feel like everyone tells you this, after you have a baby, your belly feels, it's just strange because it's gone from this really tight, full ball, pregnant belly, and then it's still like, it's just so hard to explain, but it's like gooey and like spongy, and it makes you feel a little bit weird. So you feel a bit unsupported and it feels like it's all hanging out. So I know in those first couple of weeks, or those first like 6 weeks probably, I wore these compression tights like every day because it just made everything feel like it was like sucked in, and it didn't feel like my uterus was gonna just like fall on the ground, if that makes sense. So SRC tights, and they were recommended by the physio that I seen when I was still in hospital. Got them straight away. They delivered to my door like the next day, and yeah, definitely recommend those, and you can keep them for future babies. I even like handed them to a friend to use when she was postpartum, and yeah, just really recommend. I guess the last little thing that I'll touch on is I guess return to cycle and those sorts of things. So I'm 11 months and I still haven't had a period. I think because I'm still breastfeeding Bowie. At the moment, I'm breastfeeding him 3 to 5 times a day, depending on which day it is, but always first thing in the morning, always right before bed, and always once in the night. So always 3 times, and then depending on the day, I might feed him 1 or 2 other times during the day. So for that reason, that's probably why I still haven't got my cycle back yet, and I never know when that's gonna come. It's just gonna like hit me like a surprise, and I'm gonna be like, shit, you again. So I think that's all I need to cover in terms of postpartum. I'm sure I've forgotten a million things. It's such a fun topic. I feel like I could talk about it all day. It's like when I get together with any friends who've just had a baby, and literally you can just like talk so much stuff about, like, I love talking about birth, I love talking about postpartum stuff, I love talking about pregnancy. Like, it's just like such a fun topic. So hopefully I've covered everything. If you have any questions or want to tell your stories, feel free to comment below. And I'll get back to your comments. I always check my YouTube comments and reply. And now we'll go into that week of a realistic workout routine for me at 10.5 months postpartum looks like. Good morning. It's currently Monday morning, which is the first day of my week. Here comes Bowie. So Monday morning, I'm getting my joggers on, Bowie, and we are, yes, hello darling. And we are heading to coffee. So I'll be going for a walk to coffee and back, and then I'm gonna go for my first run of the week. Oh, you stealing the show, are you? Guess what, Bowie? If you turn it, yes, if you turn it this way, there's Bowie. There's Bowie. Whoa. So that is my walk to coffee, and I'll probably go for a run from here after coffee. Beginning workout. I'm a sweaty mess, but I just got home from my run. That was 3.4 kilometers.
I'm not sure I understand.
So that's a pretty short run, but anything is better than nothing. And at the moment, my runs have only been about that, up to like 4Ks. So pretty happy with that. And time to go shower and get ready for my Monday of work. Here's trouble. What are you doing, Bowie? Mr. Chaos. Wow. Bowie, I'm here. Yoo-hoo. So, here's the thing. Usually, we would walk to coffee, and that would be kind of like my morning exercise every day. However, last night was rough, Bowie, wasn't it? You want to explore? Last night was one of the rougher nights. He woke up at 1:30, and I don't think that we got back to bed until like 4. So I just don't think I have the stamina to walk to coffee before coffee. And instead I think I want to drive to coffee and then have my coffee and then go for and then go for a little stroll. All right, should we go? Mummy needs coffee. So we drove to coffee. Hey Odie, she's on edge, she wants to get out. It's actually kind of raining, so probably lucky we did. And hopefully we can sneak in a little walk, but literally I feel like my workout routine is dictated by the weather and how much sleep we get, because sleep is life. And I didn't get much of it. Morning, we're about to head out for coffee and go for our walk. I've actually put my tights and joggers on, so I might see if I can sneak in a little run. If there's time, I'm going to the dentist at 9:30 to have my final appointment for my root canal. It's like a 3-step process. So that's happening at 9:30 today. And I want to show you guys quickly, totally off topic, but I want to show you what we made last night. This is our busy board we made for Bowie. A little bit of a craft even.
Craft a night.
Craft night. So this is all things that he can like play with because he just seems to love buttons and he loves hairbrushes and literally everything that's not a toy he loves. So we just made this with all the switches. Pulled this off one of my makeup mirrors. That's going to be noisy. And yeah, it's fun things for him to play with.
Hey.
Hey Bowie.
Bowie.
Bowie. Hello. Hello. Sit Bubba. Hello. Alright, so that's our walk. Pretty short one today. Just over a kilometre. But hey, it's better than nothing. So it is 3:30 in the afternoon. My mum, Bowie's nanny, is here and she's going to mind Bowie. And Alex and I are actually going to go for an afternoon run together. That has literally not happened since before he was born. So we're going to do that. Go for a run, do our usual circuit. And yeah, that doesn't normally happen, but I'm excited.
My favorite way to be without fear is in the now. I'm learning how. Fast life, no thanks, no, I'm doing just fine. One foot in another.
Good morning. It is currently Friday and I'm in the car, up not really early but out of the door a little bit earlier than usual, and I'm heading to Pilates. I usually like to try to get to Pilates once a week and I go to a place called Hustle. Love it. It's so good. It's like hip Pilates and only 40 minutes and the classes are just so fun. And today on Friday is Amy's class and Amy works for us at TWS, but other than that I love her classes the most because she just puts the most fun music on and the class goes so fast. So anyway, I'm heading to that. I had a bit of a shitty sleep last night. Didn't get to bed until about 1 a.m. Probably fell asleep around 1:30 or maybe a little bit before then. But yeah, Bowie sometimes just has this like witching few hours from like 10 onwards, and then I fed him from like 11:30, but it took like an hour and a half to get him into his cot because he was just so restless and squirmy. But anyway, we got there. I haven't had much sleep and I'm ready to hit some Pilates. Got to stop and get coffee on the way though. Absolute heaven.
I like it better when I'm under the sun. Ooh, 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 ooh. I'm under the sun. Ooh, ooh, ooh. My soul will tell me what I need to know.
So Pilates is done. That wrecked me so hard. Some of those things I really struggle with. I just feel like I'm not quite back at my original fitness levels for sure. But I love Pilates because it just really helps to strengthen your core, which is really important, as well as all of like your postural muscles, your back, everything. Oh, it's just so good. Amy's classes are amazing and the view from that studio is just insane. Anyway, I probably need to turn my workout off and I need to get home because we're going to see a friend and yeah, fun Friday planned. So I should probably update. It is currently Saturday and I did that Pilates class yesterday and I'm so sore, so I'm definitely not going to do anything today. We're just walking to coffee, our usual walk, which is like 2 k's each way. But that'll probably be me for today because tomorrow is Sunday and I like to go for a run on Sundays. Hey Bowie!
Oh. Denied.
Hey boo boo. Snug?
Oh, I wish you got over then.
So it is currently Sunday morning, which is my usual run day. I like to go for a run on Sundays. And I have this goal to run 10Ks this year at the Gold Coast. It was like the Gold Coast Marathon event, but the 10K event. So Sundays is my day where I try to go for a little bit of a longer run. Since Bowie, it's been almost 11 months. The longest I've been for running is about 5Ks. So I'm probably going to try to do something close to that this morning. We always go to breakfast at my favourite cafe, Good Day. So I'll probably run there. If it's not quite 5Ks, I might do a little bit of run afterwards. Running is like my favourite thing to do and it just makes me feel so good. So slowly, very, very slowly, I'm getting back into it. I used to go on Sunday morning runs for like 10 plus kilometres before pregnancy. So this has been like such a slow progression back to it. But it feels really good and yeah, I'm probably glad I've done it slowly because I think I needed the time to heal. But yeah, I'm going to go for my big run this morning. And that will be my full week of exercise postpartum complete. Finishing off my week with this walk back home. It was 4.5 Ks back. So yeah, it's a pretty good way to end the week. So guys, that is what my week of exercise and fitness postpartum, well, 11 months postpartum looks like. I've vlogged all week just to show you guys what a usual week in my life of exercise looks like. This week was probably like a pretty good week. Some weeks I do way, way less. And as I mentioned in the intro, I've been so gentle with myself and so slow to getting back into things. I'm still not really doing full HIIT workouts and just being super gentle with some pilates, lots of walking and a few runs a week. Just remembering that like everyone's postpartum journey is different and it's okay to take it slowly. I know I've been super slow and gentle with myself and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm starting to feel more and more like myself again, slowly getting there. And yeah, it's just like pregnancy and birth is such a long journey. So I think your postpartum fitness or return to fitness and working out should also be slow and gentle. If you guys have any questions, ask them below and I'll try to get back to you. And I hope you found this video useful and I'll see you guys in the next video.